Hey everyone, this is Dave with Mile High Drone Services, and how about that for an interesting intro to a video? If you subscribe to my channel, you see most of my videos are about unusual antique slot machines, music machines, maybe some videos of where I fly my drones, but they're not talking about, drone capabilities. But anyway, getting back to the intro, what you have in front of you is a Mills Violano Virtuoso machine. These were made around 1910, and they actually play the piano and the violin. And it's pretty cool. So anyway, I just actually finished writing some software to allow you to play modern music through a MIDI system and control it through your iPhones and iPads and things like that. So anyway, I guess a little bit of a shameless plug. At the end of the video, we'll play another song just for grins. So anyway, another thing is, I try to be very honest with my opinions, and if you're a DJI fanboy, DJI lemming, just stop watching the video now, because you're probably not going to like what you're about to hear, especially when I talk about Geo. So just quit watching, give me a thumbs down, enter your snarky response in the replies, and go on your way. Because you know you're going to do it, and if you watch the video, you're just going to get upset. So, having said that, let's give you a few seconds to go away, give me the thumbs down and all that, and we can go on with people who actually may want to know the capabilities, the different capabilities between the Mavic 1 and the Mavic 2 Zoom. So before we get started, I want to make something very clear. I try to start the video out with a little humor, and you might think I'm one of those guys that just hate DJI. That's not the case. I own a lot of DJI products. I own the Mavic 1, I own the Spark, I own the Air, I own the Mavic 2, I also own the S900, which is an older heavy lift drone, and the FW550, which was one of the very first drones that you could build as a kit. In general, I think their hardware is pretty amazing, and it's very solid. The main issue I have with DJI is their software. I feel that in many cases their software is half-baked. They don't test it, they put it out before it's ready, and they treat the customer base as their testers. And I just don't think that's right. I think they need to spend more time with their software design, their software process, to make sure that the bugs are not released to the field. And of course, there's always going to be some bugs, but just the sheer amount of bugs that are released are just kind of mind-boggling. The other big problem I have with DJI is, in general, how they treat their customers. In a former life, I worked at a very large company for 27 plus years, and one of the things I dealt with was doing product introduction, dealing with customers, and there is no doubt that some customers can be a pain in the ass. But you should always treat your customers with respect. Customers are buying your product, that is making you money, and that is what is paying your salary. So while some customers can be a pain in the ass, I'm probably one of them, you should always treat the customers with respect, and that is not the case that I've seen with DJI. The amount of abuse that people take on the forums when they talk about DJI and they talk about a problem or something like that from DJI support is just unbelievable. I can understand it coming from fanboys, because fanboys are basically idiots. They just have a blind following for the company. Company can do no wrong. It was the same thing with Microsoft, same thing with Apple. It doesn't matter what the product is beautiful. And so fanboys, whatever, they are what they are. But DJI, how they treat some of their customers, I think, is appalling. The fact that when a product is first being introduced or talked about, like Geo, support tells us one thing, it'll never ever lock you out of Class G airspace, and when in reality that was a total lie. The fact that DJI says on their web page currently, Geo is advisory, that's not true. The fact when they came out with the Mavic 2, Mavic 2 is a pretty cool drone. It's got a lot of cool capabilities, but they took out a lot of stuff that was in the Mavic 1. They should have been up front and said, look, this is what's not supported in the Mavic 2. And tell the customers if it's going to be supported or if it's not. Don't let people leave them guessing. And so anyway, that's it. So we can go ahead and get to the next part of the video where we actually talk about stuff. So one other thing to the people who are thinking about, buying a drone or whatever, you probably wonder, like, where do I get good information about the drones? Well, there's several forums out there. If you're looking at a DJI product like a Mavic, there's a Mavic, DJI Mavic forum, or Mavic Pro forum, or DJI Mavic forum. Google it, you'll find it. There's also a forum called RC Groups, and RC Groups used to be a very good forum. You could get a lot of information. You still can if you can filter through all the crap that's on it. That seems to be FanBoys Central, and all the people who are just in love with DJI products, they kind of propagated RC Groups, and the moderators are extremely friendly towards the manufacturer, which I get. I mean, the manufacturer is a sponsor. I mean, they're paying money to RC Groups, whereas normal users are not. But the moderators are just, some of them, in my opinion, are out of control. If you make a statement that is not in line with what they think that their sponsors might like, you will get what are called strikes or warnings against you. And if you get more than 2 or 3, they'll you get banned from the site, or you get a temporary ban or whatever. So RC Groups has basically gone to hell as far as I'm concerned. I'm still a member. I still post periodically, but I would not recommend RC Groups as the point to go to. The Mavic forum, a lot of fanboys there too, but at least when people post legitimate issues and all that, they don't get accosted like they do in RC Groups. YouTube, there's a lot of good YouTube videos out there, but there's a lot of YouTubes that are just totally a waste of time. If you're watching a YouTube video and the guy doesn't even have the product in hand and he's telling you about how wonderful it is or how bad it is, that's a waste of time. What's the value there in a review when the guy doesn't even have it? Or if the guy's bragging about, he interviewed DJI personnel, and then they show the interview, they toss a bunch of softballs. Well, first of all, there's no way DJI would let anybody but a fanboy talk to them. So those are pretty much a waste of time too. But there are a lot of good YouTube videos out there, especially if the video is by an actual commercial operator who is flying these things for profit, and they're doing direct comparisons of the quality of the camera. Those are pretty interesting and pretty good. So I think actually YouTube would be my first choice to look at, and then Facebook. There's several Facebooks areas that are dedicated to these types of drones, and for the most part, people are pretty friendly there, and don't just get their blood boiling if you say anything negative or anything like that against a product. So anyway, that's where I would recommend you doing your research. And my opinion, I'm sure a lot of people out there don't agree with it, but that's okay. That's how we have it. Okay, so this video is mainly targeted for the people who already are familiar with DJI products, specifically the Mavic 1. Maybe you're thinking about upgrading, I use that term loosely, to the Mavic 2 Zoom. I'm not going to talk about the Mavic 2 Pro. I don't own the Mavic 2 Pro. I've never flown the Mavic 2 Pro, and in my opinion, I think that would be irresponsible to talk about a product you've never flown. There's a lot of reviews out there by people that just say, oh, Mavic 2 Zoom, Mavic 2 Pro is the greatest drone ever invented, but they don't even own it. They're just buying the hype. And don't get me wrong, it is a very solid drone. The hardware in it is, for the most part, pretty amazing, with the exception of the side sensors. So anyway, having said that, I'm going to try to keep the comments fairly straightforward, just talking about the capabilities, maybe what was removed from the Mavic 2 Zoom. But first, if you are a customer who's just thinking about buying their first DJI product, I am going to get on my soapbox and I'm going to talk about Geo. So, any fanboys out there, if you're still there, you probably need to take a double drink of your Kool-Aid because you're not going to like what I'm going to say. And that's all I got to say about that. And let's talk about Geo, and then we'll talk about the comparisons between the Mavic and the Mavic 2. Need to be aware of, and that feature is Geo. And both of these products use Geo. You cannot prevent them from using Geo. It's baked into the firmware, and you can't turn it off. So what is Geo? Geo is actually a very neat idea, very cool idea. And the premise is, before you can take off, they want to make sure your drone will only take off where it's legally allowed to take off. So it's going to prevent you from flying in places that you shouldn't. For example, over nuclear power plants, over prisons, over by a very busy airport like Denver International or LAX. It's actually a very good idea. It's also something that's really hard to implement properly and really easy to screw up. And unfortunately, the version that DJI has implemented is they've screwed it up. And not just by a little bit, by a huge bit. In fact, 2 days ago, I was out flying the Mavic 1 on a commercial job. I'm not yet flying the Mavic 2 on commercial jobs because I've got about maybe 10 hours of flight time on this. I want to get a few more in before I trust it to take it on a commercial job. That's just me. Whenever I get a new drone, I always want to be sure and test it and make sure the firmware, at least from the flight controller point of view, is fully baked. Anyway, so I was on a commercial job a couple days ago. Went out to the house. It was a roof inspection. Went to take off, and DJI said, "Nope, can't take off. You're in an authorization zone." Well, it was in Class G airspace, and Class G is the most liberal airspace the FAA has. So you have to then, request permission from DJI to fly. So fortunately, I did have internet connectivity. So you go into the app, the Go4 app, and request permission to fly. And if all the stars are aligned and everything is working right, you will get permission and you can take off. Well, it took 3, maybe 4 attempts, but finally, on the final attempt, the stars were aligned and it allowed me to take off, and I was able to fly the mission. It added about a half hour to the job site time that I was there, which is annoying because I hadn't budgeted that time, but it all worked out. But the point was, this was Class G airspace. There is no reason whatsoever that I should have had to ask permission to fly my drone. It was perfectly legal. And this is the problem with Geo. It happens a lot where, for whatever reason, DJI has determined that wherever you're taking off is restricted airspace in their view, not in the FAA's view, but in their view, and you need to ask for permission. And maybe you'll get it, and maybe you won't. It just depends if things are working right. They've also got, areas on their geo map of airports that don't even exist. They never existed, yet they're in a warning zone. So if you're flying your drone around, again, in this one area where this airport has never existed, it's out by an RC field, you start getting all these warnings on your screen. Warning, you're flying in near an airport. and there's no airport there. So in some versions of the Go4 app, you can turn off those warnings. Other versions, you can't turn them off. It seems to change depending on what updates you get. But it's kind of like the boy who cried wolf. If you're getting all of these false warnings, you're just going to ignore them. So what's the point? So it would really be nice if DJI would allow you to, if you're a Part 107 commercial operator, so you've been vetted by the TSA, you've gone in, you've taken a written test, you've passed it, you know the laws, if they just allow you to opt out of Geo. But they don't do that. And in fact, a person from DJI support said rather emphatically about a year ago that there is no way DJI will ever allow people who fly the Mavic line of drones, and I assume that also goes with the Mavic Air and the Spark and all that, to ever opt out. So that was unfortunate. When Geo was first introduced, or when they were talking about it, the people from DJI support swore that Class G airspace would never ever be restricted. Well, that information was, I guess, inaccurate is the polite way of saying it. And it's also interesting that DJI support says how wonderful Geo is, and the issues are few and far between. And in one case, I looked up the location where this one DJI support person lived and flew around, because he didn't make it a secret. He advertises where he lives. There's it's actually Big Bear, Colorado. So it's or Big Bear, California. Sorry. Pretty popular tourist destination. Around Big Bear Airport is actually a no-fly zone for drones, and you go to the Geo map, and it's wide open. You don't have to request an authorization or that. You've got, commercial airline flights going in and out of that airport. No problem, can't fly there. So it was just interesting that, a lot of us who are in Class G airspace, we have to ask for permission. But apparently, if you live in certain parts of the country, you don't have to do that, even if you are flying near an airport that has commercial flights, and it's even designated as a no-drone zone. So obviously, that is my opinion of Geo. Others do share it, and that's it. So I'm going to get off my soapbox now for Geo. That was just a warning to people who are thinking about buying a DJI drone. If you already own one, you're well aware of DJI's Geo feature. So now, like I said, this video is targeted for the person who probably has a Mavic 1 and they're thinking about buying a Mavic 2, whether it's the Zoom or the Pro. What I'm going to be talking about is the Zoom. I don't own the Pro, so I'm not going to address the Pro. I feel it's irresponsible for people to review a product that they've never seen or flown. They've just heard about it or read about it on the DJI website, and they take the word. And the reason that I am going to point out the differences is the Mavic 2 Zoom is void of a lot of capabilities that are in the Mavic 1. And at least I assumed, well, you're buying the next version of the Mavic, most if not all of the features that are in the Mavic 1 would be carried forward. Well, that's not the case. Many features are missing, and it is not obvious at all on the website of the manufacturer about these omissions. So what I want to do is I just want to talk about the differences, and maybe the omissions don't matter to you at all. And if that's the case, great, but you should at least be aware of what you're buying. And on a forum, RC Groups, I actually made a request to DJI Support, because DJI Support has a presence there, and I asked them for this very information. Could you tell us what features were removed from the Mavic 1? And that was not the thing to ask. Oh my God, that was like bottom line, the answer was no, we're not going to do that. So that is kind of what compelled me to make this video. And so I've been flying this guy a lot. I've been doing a lot of testing. And so on the Mile High Drone Services website, we've actually compiled a PDF which documents at least the differences that we found, or the difference that we think we found between these two products. And so you go to our website, it's under the news section, and you can get the PDF. But what I'm going to talk about is what the differences are, and it's going to go very quickly. I'm not going to try to input my opinion, whether it's good or bad. I'll try and be like CNN or Fox News and be totally unbiased. That was a joke, by the way. So anyway, let's get started. So the video capabilities. The Mavic 1 supports 4K 4096 pixels by 2160. The Mavic 2 Zoom does not support that resolution, period. The Mavic 1 supports 4K 3840 by 2160. The Mavic 2 Zoom also supports that. However, the Mavic 2 does not support digital zoom in that resolution, and neither does the Mavic 1. So, no difference there. When we go down to 2.7K, that's 2720 by 1530. Both drones do support it. The Mavic 2 supports 25 frames per second, 48, 50, and 60. The Mavic 1 does not. The Mavic 2 does not support any digital zooming in the 2.7K video resolution. The Mavic 1 does. So what that means is you can still get 2x optical with the zoom, but you then can't increase it to 4x with digital. Kind of surprised me. I expected the zoom to also support digital zooming and all the capabilities the Mavic 1 supported, but it doesn't. 1080p, Mavic 1 supports 1080p, so does the Mavic 2. Digital zoom is supported in 1080p in all the modes. In the Mavic 2 Zoom, it's only supported in 24, 25, and 30 frames per second. If you go to 48 or faster, you get no digital zoom. So that's just something to be aware of if that's important to you. 720p, probably most people, I'm not even going to make my comments. 720p, it is supported in Mavic 1. 720p does not support it at all in the Mavic 2 Zoom. So that's pretty much the video capability differences. The next thing we'll talk about is the color options. These are the type of automatic colors that are applied when you're shooting video. So for the Mavic 1, it supports D-Cinelike, D-Log, Normal, True Color, Art, Vivid, Film, Black and White, Cool, Twilight, Pale, Old Photo, Warm, and Blue. So quite a few. You can get all sorts of different video effects when shooting with the Mavic 1. When you go to the Mavic 2, the modes that are supported are Normal and D-Cinelike. That's it. They got rid of D-Log, Art, Vivid, Film, Black and White, Cool, Twilight, Pale, Old Photo, Warm, and Blue. So, just so you know, that's what's missing. The video coding. Mavic 1 and Mavic 2 Zoom both support 264. Mavic 2 also supports 265, which is actually a very good thing. That is not supported in the Mavic 1. Some miscellaneous features that we found that were missing in the Mavic 2. Portrait mode. With the Mavic 1, you can just tap a button and you can go from landscape to portrait. That's not possible with the Mavic 2. Precision landing. That's supported in the Mavic 1. It's not supported in the Mavic 2. That's a really interesting feature to me for them to leave out. Precision landing was a big deal when the Mavic 1 was introduced. And that's a feature, when you take off, it takes a picture of the ground, and so when you have return to home come back, it comes back and lands, and when it works, and it usually does, I mean, it lands, you know, within an inch of where it took off. Really cool. The Mavic 2, they didn't put that feature in. But during the announcement, they advertised that they've got these two little LEDs that turn on, you know, when it's dusk, to light up the ground, to assist it in having, you know, a good landing. But if it's not using precision landing, what's the point? It appears to me it's only using the GPS. So those LED lights are just something to make the fanboys go, woohoo, look at that, isn't that cool? So anyway, no precision landing in the Mavic 2. Okay, so the next thing we'll talk about is the SRT data files. Both drones allow you to turn on a feature, I believe it's called video caption. And what that does, that creates a separate data file. It's called an SRT file, which is basically a closed caption file. And information on every single frame is recorded about date, time, the f-stop that's being used, things like that. In the Mavic 1, it also records GPS data. Mavic 2, they don't record GPS data. And if you're a commercial operator, GPS data could be really important. For example, let's say you're doing power line inspections. And you know, you want the GPS data recorded for every single power line that you're shooting video of. You get it in the Mavic 1, you don't get it in the Mavic 2. That was not disclosed when I bought this. Digital zoom and still photo mode. If you're just shooting still photos, not even video, the Mavic 1 allows you to do digital zooming up to 2x. Can't do that in the digital. You cannot do that in the zoom model of the Mavic 2. You can only do the analog zooming up to 2x. It just seems a little nuts that they don't allow you to do also increase that up to 4x with digital zooming, but you can't. You can do it in 1080p, but you can't do it in still mode. A bug we found was the elevation in the metadata. Every time you take a photo with either one of these things, a still photo, metadata is encoded into that photograph, which is really nice. It stores GPS data and all sorts of stuff. It also stores elevation. And, you know, I believe it uses the GPS to figure out the elevation. So it's not accurate to the inch, but it's reasonably accurate, within a few feet probably. The Mavic 2, it also shows you the elevation, but the elevation is at 387 million feet above sea level, which I think is about halfway between here and the moon. Clearly a bug. How something this basic got by their testing, well, it's not surprising because there's always lots of bugs, but it's just like, really. So hopefully that'll be fixed, you know, within a year. But if you require elevation data in your metadata, at least right now, it ain't there. 387 million feet. Another feature they got away from was with this drone with the Mavic 1, you don't even need a remote controller. You can control this with your iPhone or iPad or Android device. You know, it creates a Wi-Fi network and all that. They got rid of that capability altogether in the Mavic 2. It was another feature that they bragged about a lot when they introduced the Mavic 1. They chose not to carry it forward in the Mavic 2. Let's see here. Intelligent flight modes. So if you go to the website of the manufacturer and you go to their FAQ, I think it's number 2, it says, you know, what is different between these two? And the manufacturer says, oh, almost all the intelligent flight modes have been improved, or nearly, I think they say nearly all of them have been improved. Well, so okay, that's cool, because there's a lot of intelligent flight modes in the Mavic 1. You've got, you know, gesture and cinematic and fixed wing and terrain follow and all that. Well, it turns out a lot of the intelligent flight modes were ripped out of the Mavic 2. The modes that were taken out are gesture mode. You know, that's the mode where the drone's looking at you and you can do some weird things with your arms and make it go forward and come back and take pictures. Again, another big thing that they were hyping the crap out of when they announced the Mavic 1, all their YouTube demo or a lot of their YouTube demo videos, you know, showed you know, people on the beach and, you know, having the things take picture of themselves just by giving the right gestures. Well, it's not available in the Mavic 2. Cinematic mode, that's not available. Fixed wing, that's not available. Terrain follow, another thing that was really pushed and advertised when the Mavic 1 came out, not available. Course lock and home lock. It's really weird they take these features out of the Mavic 2. I mean, these features have been in the DJI line of products since the Phantom 1 days. But anyway, they ripped them out, or are not supporting them. Continue. Sensors. The Mavic 1 has sensors that aim forward and sensors that aim down. You know, if you're a Mavic 1 owner, you know the sensors are to prevent you from hitting a tree or a brick wall or whatever. It's clearly a safety thing. I've never really had to use them. I try to think of myself as a somewhat competent pilot. But anyway, I did test one time I was out in the field. I saw a big pile of hay, so I flew the Mavic 1 right towards it. At first in slow speeds, other full blast in P mode, and sure enough, it was able to stop, and it worked well. So that was cool. The Mavic 2 has several additional sensors. It not only has the front sensors and the down sensors, it has sensors aiming backwards. So if you're flying backwards towards a tree or a building, theoretically it'll stop. And one thing they really talked about at the launch was the side sensors. So it has one side sensor on each one, and it's aiming right over the tips of the rear props. But anyway, the theory is if it's flying sideways, this is what we were told at the launch, you know, it's flying sideways, tree, building, whatever, it'll stop. So I thought, well, this is pretty cool. I do a lot of real estate type things, and a lot of those shots are using orbits. And an orbit is when you program the drone to fly a circle around a property and the front of it's always facing the property. So having those side sensors could come in handy, especially if there are trees or buildings around the orbit, and keep you from hitting that. What I've always done with the Mavic 1 is when I program an orbit, I fly around with it facing forward, and I do it slowly to make sure that I am clear of everything, clear by a pretty wide margin actually, and then I'm, you know, confident that it will be okay when I'm doing the orbit and everything is facing the center. So I was thinking, like, well, side sensors, maybe I won't have to do that that first round again, although probably be a good idea to do it anyway just for safety. Well, it turns out, and this was not disclosed at all that I could find during the launch, these side sensors only work in two modes. One is when you're in tripod mode and the drone is, you know, flying at a crawl, and I'm not quite sure why you would need side avoidance if the thing's flying only at, you know, 1 mile an hour or whatever, or in a mode that's called active track, which is, you know, when it's following a person that's running on the ground or a car or whatever. The Mavic 1 also has active track. I played with it a few times, was not impressed. It always lost the subject, so when it did that, it just, you know, went into a hover. Hopefully it's better on the Mavic 2. Haven't tested it, but it's really odd. If they can get it to work in active track, why don't they have it work in normal GPS or P mode or on an orbit? And did a little bit more research a few days ago, and I found something very interesting in the fine print of the DJI warranty. It said, the warranty is void if your Mavic 2 has a collision when going sideways, even if it's in active track or tripod mode. It doesn't have any disclaimers about if you're flying forward and you hit a tree or backwards, but just sideways. That kind of tells me the side sensors, at least DJI doesn't believe the side sensors work that great, because if they're disclaiming zero warranty support, that's not encouraging. It also has a sensor facing up, so if you're flying under a tree or a bridge and you tell it to go up, it won't hit the top of the bridge. So assuming that works, that could be useful. There were some questions that came up in a Facebook group that says, okay, let's say you're under a bridge. You know, the bridge is here and you're flying under it, and for whatever reason you hit return to home, and you know, the return to home altitude is 100 feet. Let's say the bridge is 30 feet. You're down here. So the first thing the drone is going to do when you hit return to home is going to go straight up to get to the return to home altitude. Well, if the sensor detects the bridge, which it should stop it from going up. What does the drone do then? Does it just go up to the height just below the top of the bridge and then start going forward? Or does it go down? Does it start going up and down? Couldn't find an answer, and I tried to encourage some people to try it, take it for the team. No one was willing to do that. So anyway, Mavic 2 has a bunch more sensors. Like I said, it's got the side sensors, it's got the sensors aiming up. Side sensors are only active in tripod and active track mode, which tells me they're, you know, basically useless. It's kind of like, you know, be a car manufacturer advertising, oh, we've got new side airbags to protect you in a crash. And great, so, you know, you make part of your buying decision based on those side airbags. And then you find out later, like, well, those side airbags, they only really will deploy if your accident is going less than 1 mile per hour. Okay, what's the point? And also we avoid any responsibility or anything that they actually work. But whatever, that's the state with the side sensors. DJI fanboys, take a deep breath. If you're still here, everything's okay. It's okay to talk about the deficiencies of a product, so maybe have some Kool-Aid or whatever, but still good? All right, good. Field testing. DJI announced 31 minutes on these new batteries, and of course that's down to 0%, and that's not realistic. Of course everyone knows that's not realistic in the real world. And so anyway, we did some testing. We took the Mavic 1 out. We, you know, flew it out 75 feet, put it in a hover 50 feet above, see how long it would take the battery to get down to 20%, and then we did that with the Mavic 2. The Mavic Pro went approximately 18 minutes, 17 minutes and 56 seconds, and the Mavic 2 Zoom went 20 minutes and 1 second. So you got about 2 minutes extra on the Mavic 2. So that's good. It did last longer. Then we did some testing, flying it in sport mode. So we took off, immediately put it in sport mode, and just flew around a field, back and forth, you know, as fast as we could, and took it down to 20%. And we did this several times on different days. One time the temperature was about 70 degrees. The other day the temperature was about 80 degrees, so it was a little bit warmer. But anyway, the average time that you can fly the Mavic 2 Zoom in S mode was 13 minutes and 21 seconds. And the average time that the Mavic Pro in the same conditions, because we would fly this, and we would fly this, and then the next day same, so virtually same temperature, there was no wind, was 11 minutes and 22 seconds. So, you know, if you do the math, it was 1 minute and 59 seconds. So right at 2 minutes, the same as the hover. So this gave you about 2 minutes extra flight time. Then we went into P mode. Same thing. We flew around a field, you know, in P mode, took it down to 20%. The Mavic 2 lasted 19 minutes, 55 seconds. The Mavic Pro, interestingly enough, the first version, lasted longer. It went 20 minutes and 21 seconds. So they were pretty close, but the Mavic actually outperformed the Mavic 2 by 26 seconds. You know, it's not a huge deal, but the way DJI touted the extra battery flight time on the Mavic 2, well, not if you're in P mode. And so if that's important to you, that's what we found. Disclaimer, we are in Colorado, in the Denver area, so the field elevation was about 5,000 feet above sea level. So we're flying fairly high here. You might get a little longer flights down at sea level. You probably should. Air is denser down there, so motors don't have to work quite as hard. But you know, that's what we found flying in the Denver area. So finally, let's look at the price comparisons. And you probably know this. I mean, this isn't a secret. You're paying a premium for the Mavic 2. Right now, the price for the Mavic 2, just the drone, is $1,249. And the price for the Mavic Pro is $999, so roughly $1,000. So this guy is about, or is, $250 cheaper than the Mavic 2 Zoom. If you do the fly kit route, or if you just buy the the Fly More kit, the Fly More kit for the Mavic 2 is $79 more than the Mavic 1. Batteries. This is unfortunate. I'll put it that way. The additional batteries, DJI just did a price increase, $139 per battery for the Mavic 2 versus $89 for the Mavic 1. Mavic 1 batteries, I believe, used to be $69, and when this product was announced, they were $119 for the batteries for the Mavic 2. But within a couple of weeks, DJI increased the price, which annoyed several people. So anyway, it's $50 more for a Mavic 2 battery versus a Mavic 1 battery. And, you know, it's $50 worth the extra 2 minutes you get in sport mode or hover time. That's your decision. But anyway, and then they also sell a combo drone plus Fly More plus goggles. The Mavic 2 Zoom is $2,077. Mavic Pro is $1,598. So if you go the Mavic 2 Zoom route, you're going to spend $479 more. Another thing that you might want to be aware of if you're new to DJI is the Mavic 1s do go on sale periodically, you know, on Amazon Prime Day, Black Friday, and all that, for about a $200 savings. There's no reason for me to believe that that won't happen in the future. Will the Mavic 2 also go on sale? In my opinion, not in the foreseeable future. The way they're hyping it and the way the FanBoys are just buy, you know, it's the best drone ever to exist. I think DJI is going to you know, milk it as hard as they can, and I don't blame them. I would do the same thing. I mean, that's the whole purpose of the company, is to make as much money as they can for their investors or their owner. So if they can get people to pay an extra $20 or an extra $50 per battery for the Mavic 2 over the Mavic 1, more power to them. The Mavic 2 battery is a 4S battery, so the Mavic 1 is a 3S. So, you know, there are more parts in the Mavic 2 battery. I guess I should hold the Mavic 2 battery. You know, it's got 3S versus 4S, you know, that's what, 33% more. So, you know, 33% price premium would be appropriate, but the $50 over $89 is significantly more than 50%. So that is it as far as comparing the Mavic 1 to the Mavic 2 zoom. I hope you found this educational, maybe slightly entertaining. You know, if you're a fanboy or a RC group mod or a DJI Lemming, like I said, give me the thumbs down because I know you're going to do it anyway. So, and go grab a couple glasses of Kool-Aids because you know that's cool. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it, and finally, let's play one more song on the Mills Violano, and let's play something by, I don't know, how about the Beatles? So enjoy, give me your comments, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.